Well, following the war between Russia and Ukraine, the prices of crude oil have increased significantly in the global market, a development that has also affected the landing cost of petrol into Nigeria. According to the recently released data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the value of imported premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, jumped by 88.15% to hit 3.97 trillion naira in the year 2021, indicating 88.15% higher than the 2.1 trillion worth of PMS imported in 2020. Aside from the increase in cost of petrol importation, the federal government has also incurred increase in cost of fuel subsidy, also known as under recovery, with subsidy gulping 1.43 trillion naira in 2021, a development that has made economic and energy experts describe as worrisome and harmful to the country's recovery or fragile economy. Well, to make us understand the impact of this and all other issues across the oil and gas industry, joining me via Zoom is an energy analyst at Stairs Business, Noel Okwedi. Noel, it's good to see you. It's been a while. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
Yes, very well. It's sad. In just 12 months, we've seen a hike, talking about imports of PMS, 88%. And we're doing about 3.97 trillion naira importing fuel. Now, take us through this as a professional. What is responsible for all of these increases?
Okay, so there are two main factors. So as we know, price is not just determined by, like the total price, not just determined by the unit price of petrol, but also the quantity that we're importing. So we know some of the issues affecting the price, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, which has increased the cost of crude oil, and petrol is a byproduct of crude oil. So when the cost of crude oil changes, increases or decreases, the cost of petrol also changes. And that's what we're seeing, not just in Nigeria, but across the world. Nigerians are protected from it because of the subsidy. But another reason why the amount has risen to, the NPC's expenditure has risen to 3.97 trillion is the quantity of petrol that we're importing. So that has also increased, and that's mainly because of smuggling. So one of the downsides, or one of the obvious inefficiencies of having a petrol subsidy is that citizens of countries, of neighboring countries who don't have their own subsidies in their countries tend to come to Nigeria to buy petrol where it's cheaper and then take to their countries. So their demand is added to our demand, because there's no way to differentiate our demand from external demand. And it just creates that market for smuggling. So those are two of the major reasons why we're seeing such a huge spike in prices.
Smuggling seems to be so attractive now when it comes to sale of PMS. And a lot needs to be done to check this. We're not even looking at all theft now. We're looking at the refined products being moved out of the country. How attractive is this? Can you tell us more about it?
It's attractive. If you think about it, we're buying petrol 165 naira, and the cost of petrol, besides adding taxes and other costs, is about 400 naira. So that's like more than 2 times the price for other countries, for neighboring countries like Benin Republic and Togo and Niger and Chad. So it makes sense to come here to buy petrol where it's cheaper, and then take it there, probably to even sell it and make like times 2 of your profits that they will ordinarily make. So it's a huge market, and it's very lucrative. Actually, it's sad, but it's quite profitable.
Real business there. But let me also ask you, private marketers are yet to get back to business. They are not bringing in PMS. As of the last check, NNPC is still responsible for that. And when the contaminated fuel issue popped up, some names were mentioned. Now, something is just not straight here, please. I don't know. You can explain to us. How can the marketers get back into business?
Well, with the way the current market is, because of the subsidy, it's going to be really hard for petrol marketers to get into the market. So the NNPC is the sole importer of petrol to Nigeria, and that's just a way of controlling the quantity. So with a subsidized price, that reduces the profit that private petrol marketers can make if they were the ones importing petrol. So there's not much incentive for them to import that much. So to ensure that our petrol importation quantities are enough to meet our demand, that's why the NNPC has to step in to be in charge of that process. The only solution would be to remove the subsidy so that petrol marketers can make profit, or can even make a reasonable margin for distribution and importation when they import petrol. But as it is now, because of the subsidy, that's not possible, and that's why the NNPC has to be in charge of the whole process.
We have extended implementation of the PIA by 18 months, and of course that has to do with subsidy issues. I'm also thinking, will this not affect investors' confidence? Do you think investors will still like to come in and play actively in that sector if there is no form of clarity?
Definitely going to affect. It's already affecting investor confidence. Even besides the subsidy issue, from the upstream segment where we're seeing oil theft and vandalism, which has basically chased some of the international oil companies away. And in the downstream sector, there's no incentive for investors to come in because there's still a subsidy. So that puts a cap on how much they can make or how efficient the downstream market can even be. So yeah, it's definitely affecting investor confidence in Nigeria. And that's probably one of the reasons why we haven't seen any improvement in the oil and gas market since the implementation of the PIA. Because in my opinion, I think it was just too little, too late. And then even besides that, the government isn't even allowing it to be fully implemented, because implementing the PIA, like we said, you have to remove the subsidy. And it's going to be painful in the short run, definitely. But in the long run, it's beneficial for the market. But it's just for the government to make that decision. It's not an easy decision, though.
Cost of subsidy on the recovery, that is looking so loud now when you consider what the price of crude is also, with regards to Russian and of course Ukraine crisis. But paying an estimated 360 billion naira monthly, if it continues this way, that will lead to about 4 trillion naira for subsidy payments. All of these calculations not done by me, from records from the World Bank and the IMF, saying this is what we might face this year. No, is this sustainable? Let's be realistic. Is it sustainable?
Well, it's not sustainable because we're already seeing that, like the federal government, they're borrowing more than they've ever borrowed, between the local borrowing from the CBN, international borrowing, raising euro bonds, and then we're now spending so much money on petrol subsidies that aren't really, if you think about it, aren't really producing any results. They're just protecting consumers from the price of petrol. But on the other hand, the thing is that right now, removing the petrol subsidy will not be an easy decision because of where the economy is, right? So we're saying inflation is at double digits. Removing the petrol subsidy will make that skyrocket even more and make things just more difficult for Nigeria. And especially in a pre-election year, it's not a popular decision, but it's definitely not sustainable. And it's just something that the Nigerian government just has to bite the bullet and make the decision. And I hate to say this, but people are going to suffer. But I guess in the long run, it will pay off because we save money too. It just depends on if the money that's saved is used correctly to actually develop the country, and it's not put to better use than that.
While we continue to struggle with all of these challenges, we still have the big one in the Niger Delta region, the oil theft. That's crude oil theft, which is becoming more worrisome with the quantum and the figures coming even from, just lately we've seen what's been happening, and the federal government team going to do an on-the-spot assessment of this. How well, or how would you say this is also eating deep into the fabric of the Nigerian economy, because we can't even meet our OPEC quota?
Yes, definitely. It's a huge problem, especially because oil exports are a major source of foreign exchange and government revenue. So a huge amount of our foreign exchange, that's our major source of foreign exchange, because most of exports are oil exports. And now we're doing 1.2 million barrels per day on average, and we should be doing about 1.8. And with oil theft, that keeps increasing even more. There's no guarantee that we can even meet 1.2 in the coming months. And then it's even worse because right now oil prices are at, like we said, they are at all-time high rates, and Nigeria can't even take advantage of that because of oil theft, because we're losing all our oil to vandalism and theft and sales when we could be making money from it. So it's very bad for the economy. And especially now, like we've just said, we're spending lots of money on subsidies. We're not earning as much from oil. So we are basically losing from both ends. And it's just catastrophic, actually, for the Nigerian economy. We're now having to borrow more and we're earning less. So in the near future, it might even become a problem for us to pay back our interest and service our debt, because we're not earning enough to meet our debt service payments.
Indeed, and oil still remains the mainstay of Nigeria's economy. No matter how much we try to diversify, I always say that we also need oil to diversify our economy, because we need that money. Let's touch briefly on refineries. It's been a while we had you talk on the show, so let's do some talks around refining. And $1.5 billion is what has been allocated for the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery. Dangote refinery is also on the other side. We've seen the fertilizer plant being inaugurated. What are you thinking? Will this end all of this problems for us as Nigerians? A lot of views about this. I'd like to get yours.
Well, the refineries alone will not fix our problems, because the subsidy is a major problem, actually. But if you think about it, if we have refineries, the NNPC's refineries start working, and how is the NNPC going to sell its petrol to consumers? So are they going to give oil to their refineries, like essentially changing the type of subsidy and instead giving oil to refineries to refine and then give petrol? Another angle is that with the current or the past cross scarcity that we just experienced, where we imported petrol that had contaminated petrol. So what if one of our refineries produce contaminated petrol? What happens then? It's important that we have options, and we can have options and really improve the efficiency of our downstream oil and gas market is to remove the subsidy, to be honest, because you're looking at not just the refining process, but also distribution, transportation. Right now, we don't use pipelines. Pipelines are the cheapest way to transport petrol, but because of the state of our pipelines, we don't use pipelines, we use trucks. And we know all the issues that come with that. There are accidents, the roads are bad, it's more expensive, but because of the subsidy, there's no incentive for people to even invest in pipelines. So even if the refineries were working, we would still need to remove the petrol subsidy, and we would still need to have a market price for petrol. So petrol would now be out of the government's control, and the market would be allowed to run freely. That's the only way that we can actually fully deregulate the downstream sector.
Full deregulation, it scares everyone, but I think it should be. Are you one of those that think it should be? Because I also think, I don't know if it's correct, that it could be a gradual process, and as we try to take off the subsidy, they try to put in place things to, help Nigerians, because the negative effect or impact of this would definitely be felt on transport fares, food stuff, and all of that. So don't you think there needs to be a process, like a transition period?
No, definitely, I agree. You can't just remove the subsidy immediately, just like that. I think that there has to be a gradual, but there has to be things in place that will protect consumers in the short run, at least. So there was a time where there was an idea about giving people benefits, giving people money, like the poorest Nigerians money, or just any kind of benefits, really, to just protect people from the shock, especially that in the short run, the first few months after the subsidy is removed, before the market kind of stabilizes. It's important that people are protected from that. And I think that's a better use of the amount that we're spending on subsidy than, I think that's a better use of the amount that we're spending on subsidy, just using it to make sure that people are protected, the poorest of our community are protected from the shock to transportation, inflation, food costs, and just the general economy.
So I'll let you go now, but just your comments. Do you think that the oil market will continue to see this boom, if I'll call it, $130, $120? Some say we could get to as much as $150 before it could be back to about $120. What are your projections for the market despite all of these challenges?
Well, I'll say that it's very difficult to predict.
Very difficult, I know. No one thought we could get to 130 at this time. We're doing 80, 90.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Because events just happened. So, like the Russia-Ukraine crisis happened. Saudi Arabia, Aramco, one of their, some of their infrastructure was bombed by some terrorists, and that also affected the price for a bit. So, it's really hard to say because you don't know what's going to happen, but I think that we're going to continue to see high oil prices for a while we still keep watching to see what happens and barring any unforeseen circumstances that could occur. And we're also seeing China going back into lockdown, so we're not even sure what's happening with COVID either. So it's really hard to say, but I don't think high oil prices are going away anytime soon.
Brilliant submission there. Noel Okwodi is the energy analyst at Ster's Business. Thank you so much and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.